Good morning, everybody. It is 7 o'clock. You are very welcome to join us for the breakfast show here on Sky News. Wherever you're watching us after one of the most dramatic weeks in British politics. In the end, the pressure on the Prime Minister became just too much. Boris Johnson was forced out of the top job after nearly 60 MPs quit his government. But he's not going anywhere just yet, instead staying on as leader while his successor is chosen. And as the starting gun is fired in the race for the next leader this morning, growing pressure over that timeline with anger from some of his colleagues that he could remain in post for several months. We'll have all the reaction to the PM's resignation from the new Education Secretary, that's Mr James Cleverly, in just a moment or two. Later on, Labour's Angela Rayner, the Lib Dem leader Sir Ed Davey and the SNP Westminster leader Ian Blackford all joining us on the programme. Busy Friday morning. It is Friday, the 8th of July. The long goodbye, pressure on Boris Johnson to go now after setting out plans for a delayed departure. The race begins to succeed him, but it's a crowded field with up to 12 candidates tipped to run. Number 10 denies newspaper reports the PM is staying in place to host a summer wedding party at Chequers, insisting he's continuing his obligation to the public. The former Prime Minister of Japan, Shinzo Abe, has been shot in the chest while giving a campaign speech in Western Japan. He's in a grave condition. It's a huge day for Cam Norrie at Wimbledon. The Brit faces top seed Novak Djokovic in the men's semis.
The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind.
A one-off new recording of Bob Dylan's hit song is sold at auction for £1.48 million. Also coming up on the programme for you this morning, a Prime Minister who defied convention and caused controversy. But how will the public remember Boris Johnson's premiership? We'll speak to a leading pollster later in the programme. And just what can we learn from the gestures, movements and behaviours of Mr Johnson? We'll analyse the body language of the Prime Minister on the day he resigned from the top job. Talk about all of that, should we? With the man who is very much in the know, James Cleverly, the Education Secretary, is with us in the studio. Hi, good morning, good morning. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. It's a fantastic job. I mean, education, it goes without saying, incredibly important. So it's a fantastic job, yeah.
Just to clarify before we go any further, did he actually resign yesterday? Because I didn't hear him say resign or resignation at any stage.
Oh, I think we can take that as read. I mean, I didn't do a word analysis of the speech, but he is standing down, and he made it clear at Cabinet that that it was a pleasure to serve the country, but now we need to get a new leader, and he expects us in the intervening period of time to focus on delivering for the British people, and that's absolutely right.
Why does he think he had to resign?
Well, ultimately, to be Prime Minister, you have to have the ability to form a government, and when government colleagues in such numbers are saying that they didn't want to serve under him, then that, I fear, became inevitability. And it's right that he has stood down. It's right that he has put a team in place to continue governing whilst the selection procedure goes for his successor. And we should do that, I think, pretty quickly, pretty promptly, and then we can get very much focused on what we should always be focused on, which is, as I say, delivering for the people of this country.
Listening to his speech, he didn't sound as though he felt that he'd done anything wrong. Well,
I think clearly he recognised that he wasn't able to form a government. That was clear. He is standing down. I'm sure, and you're going to do analysis later on, I'm sure there'll be plenty of people that will do a word-for-word analysis. You can do a body language analysis. Those will be raked over, I have no doubt. But the fact is now that he is handing on to a successor who will be chosen, I think, pretty promptly. And then we will, all of us here in the government, focus on, as I say, delivering for the British people at an incredibly turbulent time, both domestically and internationally.
Does he acknowledge he did anything wrong? You know him well. You've been
well. He's apologised
for a long time.
Yeah, he has apologised.
He
He has apologised. He's apologised as I say, I'm not going to do a word analysis of the speech, but he has apologised for the situation, and he is standing down. And I think now the thing that I will be doing, my colleagues will be doing, and I think everyone else will be doing now, is focusing on the future, focusing on who's coming next, what their agenda will be, and how we continue servicing the people that put us into Parliament and put us into government.
He feels that changing Prime Minister is an eccentric decision. Do you think the same?
Well, as I say, I'm focused on what happens next. Look, you will want to do analysis of what has just happened.
I'm just asking whether you think it's eccentric.
And I'm saying I'm focusing, and the government is focusing on the future, which is the right thing to do. And the future is about making sure we have a new Prime Minister and Prime Ministerial and governmental team in place promptly, and in the meantime continue to serve the British people.
What's his role now?
His role now, he remains Prime Minister until a new Prime Minister is found. That's how our system works. I think that everyone recognises the incentive of doing that properly and professionally, but quickly, so that we can get some certainty, and so the new Prime Minister, whoever that may be, can build their team and make sure they're continuing to focus on what really matters, and that's the people of this country.
He did say he didn't want to influence major policy. Why did he replace 5 cabinet positions minutes before he resigned then?
Well, he has to form a government. We have to have a functioning government. He has put people in place. I looked around the cabinet table. There's a wealth of experience around the cabinet table to make sure that we continue delivering government, because the world does not stop. The issues that we deal with don't stop. So he has a duty to ensure that government
But it's not
continues.
his cabinet anymore, is it?
Well, it is until a new Prime Minister is in place.
So he is influencing policy then?
No, but the point is that there are day-to-day decisions that have to be made in all kinds of departments across government. What he has said is he is not going to make decisions that would limit the options for his successor. That would be wrong. I think that is the right and honourable thing to do.
So he's a caretaker Prime Minister, to all intents and purposes. Does that make you a caretaker Education Secretary?
Well, you are in the job that you are in, doing the job that you are doing until you are replaced. That is how it always works in politics. None of us know exactly how long we're going to be in our roles. Ultimately, I'm not going to focus on how long or whatever. There are decisions that need to be taken. In education, we're moving into the exam results season, We're moving into school places season, we're moving into university admissions seasons. There are decisions that need to be made. I've already spoken with a number of union leaders and a number of bodies in the education sector. I did that on my first day at work. I and my colleagues, I'm sure, will be exactly the same, will be working hard to deliver good, professional, functioning government for as long as we're in place. If that's a short time or a long time, none of us know.
OK. Will you be pushing for the 9% for teachers' pay increase that your predecessor before last, who is now the Chancellor, was pushing for when he was Education Secretary? Will you still be pushing for that?
We absolutely... look, and as I've been doing this job now for less than 24 hours. I'm going to be looking, of course, at all these things, including...
There are teachers watching at home
Of course.
this morning.
And look...
are you going to be pushing for 9%?
I am going to be analysing exactly all the decisions that I need to take
in terms an open door, weren't you, with the Chancellor, because he's already said yes.
In terms of teachers' pay, I recognise how very important that is, particularly in a time of inflation, and of course I will be looking very seriously at that, and we'll be making
Is that
these
yes to
announcements.
9% or not?
I tell you something, I don't think it would be very professional of me to start making decisions on the hoof and making announcements here in the studio.
Why is that on the hoof?
Because I was appointed yesterday afternoon.
Well, that's no excuse, is it? Yeah, I'm guessing you think that you're very good at the job. I mean, you've been in government a long time.
And you know how
this works?
You know how to be very good at a job, Kay? I know, because I know this is what you do, is you are thoughtful, you are analytical, you make decisions promptly, but you don't rush them. That's exactly how I intend to.
And I'm well prepared when I come in for interviews.
Absolutely. And I'm well prepared to not answer that question.
OK, even though you know that the Chancellor would say yes if you said 9%.
I mean, look, you can keep asking the same question. I'm going to give you the same answer.
Well, I'm very sorry at home if you're watching and getting ready for school. I did ask him.
You did.
Talk to me about this party that I'm hearing about, this wedding party at Chequers, which is the grace and favour home of the Prime Minister, not the caretaker Prime Minister.
There is no such thing as...
OK.
There's no such thing as a caretaker Prime Minister.
So he's still the Prime Minister, then?
In our system, there is a Prime Minister.
What's he resigned from, then?
He is resigning from his role as Prime Minister and leader of the party once a successor...
So he's not yet resigned?
Once a successor has been appointed.
So he hasn't yet resigned? Is that what you're saying?
What I'm saying is he's made an announcement. You can read it.
Because I didn't hear him say resign in his speech.
Well, if you don't think he's going, we'll take a big bet on whether he's still Prime Minister.
OK, so he's Prime Minister, so he's still allowed to use his grace and favour home. So is it right that he has his wedding party there?
Well, look, as I say, I don't know the details about that. I've seen some media speculation. Unsurprisingly, that was not part of the discussion that I had.
Have you not got an invite?
With him. It's not part of the discussion that I've had with him.
Have you had an invite?
No. No.
Oh.
So the point.
Dear, not flipping invites. If you get one, will you go?
So the point is, look, the point is, he is very, very clear that we are here to serve the British people. He is also very clear that we do that until the new Prime Minister is in place, and that's what he is doing personally. And we will continue to work, as I say, focusing on the things we should be focusing on, which is the delivery of good government for this country.
The optics, though, of having a wedding party during a cost of living crisis when we are potentially about to go into recession, you have to accept that would not be very good.
Well, people have weddings and wedding parties all the time. People have... it's celebrating getting married to someone you love, I think, is the most natural and wonderful thing in the world, and I don't begrudge that of anybody. And I know a lot of people, and I had constituents, a lot of people had their wedding celebrations delayed because of COVID, and they're looking to celebrate their love now. There is nothing wrong with that, and I'm not going to criticise it.
Is it right that the taxpayer, my viewers this morning, would pick up any amount of that bill for that wedding party?
Well, my understanding, and I don't pretend to be an expert on this. I don't have the details about how checkers work. My understanding is that private functions are not paid out of the public purse. Yeah,
but there'd be extra security, wouldn't there? There are hundreds of people there.
I don't necessarily know that that is the case. I think the security arrangements of government buildings are what they are. They are a standing cost. And whether
so you're pretty confident that there won't be any cost to the taxpayer?
Well, so, as I say, my understanding is that private expenditure is not funded out of the public purse.
OK, so there won't be any cost to the taxpayer?
That's my understanding.
OK, and if you got an invite, would you go?
Of course I would go. He's a long-standing friend and colleague. I know him really well. I know Carrie really well. But as I say, I'm not so presumptuous, and I don't want to get told off by anyone, them or Mrs. C, for presumptively inserting myself in someone else's celebration.
Well, I think she should probably buy a hat just in case, is what I'm suggesting. Will you stand for leader?
No, I won't be. So as you know, I put myself forward last time. I don't regret that. I really enjoyed it. As you know, my wife has been going through cancer treatment, and whilst that is progressing well, it hasn't concluded. It's not the right time for me. And I feel comfortable that actually we have a range of candidates within the party that would make excellent prime ministers. And before you ask the next obvious question, I haven't decided who I'm going to support yet.
That wasn't what I was going to ask you. I was going to ask you, how's your missus doing?
Oh, that's really... Yeah, it's going well. The medical team at Guy's and the team at St Thomas's that she's working with have been absolutely amazing. Things are progressing well. She's not quite back to her pre-treatment self, but the treatment seems to have been going very, very well. But
the boys are OK?
Yeah, it's always tough. It is always tough, and seeing someone you love go through that is not easy. And I know this is something that touches so many families, so many women across the country. But as I say, the treatment she's had, the team, as I say, at both Guy's Cancer and St Thomas's have been absolutely unbelievable. I cannot praise them highly enough. But absolutely fantastic.
And then I was going to ask you who you're going to support.
I have not decided yet. Well, look, we'll see who.
What's the criteria?
We'll see. Look, the criteria is really simple. Someone that would be a good governor of the government. Someone who will be a good campaigner. Someone who will form a good government. Look, Brexit's done. So Brexit's done.
We're almost out of time. That's for another conversation. Okay. What about one of those that have stabbed your boss in the back? Will you still vote for them?
Well, look, as I say, I think that we have I think we've got a range of candidates. I do think, actually, that demonstrating loyalty to others is important if you want people to demonstrate loyalty to you. And I think that will be one of the criteria that is taken very, very seriously by not just myself, but by a range of people. But as I say, we have a number of people who would make excellent Prime Ministers. I think we're spoilt for choice.
Final thought before I let you go. We heard from Sir John Major saying that potentially, in order to expedite what's going on, you could get rid of the grassroots vote. So Conservative members watching us this morning would not get a vote in who the next Prime Minister would be.
So, John Major has an opinion. I disagree with that. I think what we saw with Theresa May, that testing a future Prime Minister's ability to campaign across the country is really important. Theresa May had many, many, many fantastic attributes, but what we saw in the 2017 general election, she was not a natural campaigner, and that was not good for government. So I think testing the ability of a candidate to reach out beyond the Westminster bubble is incredibly important. So I think it's an important part of the process.
Thank you for joining us, and warm regards to your good lady.
Thank you.
Hope that she continues to be well. Thank you. A quick look at the papers for you. The Mirror splashes with one last party. The paper's exclusive claiming Boris Johnson wants to stay in post to host a wedding bash at his Chequers residence. The Telegraph leads with news that some senior Conservatives fearing that Mr Johnson's caretaker government could leave the country paralysed. Downfall, that's the front of the Eye, claiming at least 11 Tories are now considering standing for the party leadership. Front page of The Times. Johnson throws in the towel, says The Times, quoting his words, "When the herd moves, it moves." While the Mail warns Tory MPs they may rue the day they forced Mr Johnson out, asking, what the hell have they done? Just hearing that the former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has been shot during a speech in the city of Nara. What's happening? How is he? Let's find out. Nicole's standing by. Hi, Nicole.
Well, we have some video that has been captured showing some indication of what happened during that attack. You can see Shinzo Abe addressing the crowds. He was on the campaign trail. A shot is heard, and then a suspect is wrestled to the ground. He was later airlifted out. Officials say that his heart has stopped. The fire department of the city has also confirmed that he was in cardio and pulmonary arrest. Now, local media says that a 42-year-old man has been arrested, that he used a homemade gun, and that he told police that he was unhappy with Abe's performance and that he intended to kill him. Now, this is an incredibly rare, unusual situation to be happening in Japan. It's normally a very safe country. Gun violence is rare. Political violence is rare as well. We've also heard from Japan's Prime Minister, Fumio Kishida. He has said that there will, of course, be an investigation, and he wants to believe that the security was sufficient, and he's condemned the act in the strongest terms. More international reaction is coming out because Shinzo Abe had global stature. He was a major figure on the international stage during his long tenure as Japan's Prime Minister. We've heard from Boris Johnson. He said that he's utterly appalled by this attack, calling it despicable. Also, the US Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, speaking at the G20 Foreign Ministers meeting in Burley, has said that thoughts and prayers are with his family and the people of Japan at this time. Also, the US ambassador to Japan recognising that Shinzo Abe was an outstanding leader and an unwavering ally of the United States. So many questions are going to be asked about how such an incredible security breach could have happened, because looking at that video, it appears that the attack took place in close range. There doesn't appear to have been a great deal of security around, but more international reaction will come out during the day. Shinzo Abe was Prime Minister of Japan twice, as I said, the longest serving leader. He steered the country through a difficult economic period when the economy was stagnating, an ageing population. In effect, he formed his own economic policy, which in the end was known as Abenomics.
OK, thanks so much indeed, Nicole. Thank you. Obviously, we'll continue to update you on the condition of Mr Abe, who has been shot during a presentation within the last few hours. Still to come on the programme, joined by the Liberal Democrat leader, that's Ed Davey, of course, in the studio in just a moment. Then after that, Labour's Deputy Leader Angela Rayner will also be coming in to give us her reaction to the Prime Minister's resignation. Or is it? And we'll be hearing from the SNP's Ian Blackford. Sir Ed is with us now. Well, they think it's all over, but when I was speaking, I don't know if you heard my interview with James Cleverly, he didn't mention resign in his speech at all, and he's still in charge.
Yeah, not only didn't he mention resign, he didn't apologise. And I think many people hoped that he'd have some grace, take some responsibility, and he didn't. He was blaming everyone else. And the fact that, as you say, he didn't mention the word resign, I think should alarm Conservative MPs. So Liberal Democrats have said he should go now. He shouldn't be allowed to go on, whether it's a caretaker, whether you call him a caretaker Prime Minister or not.
He also corrected me on that and said there's no such thing as a caretaker Prime Minister, so he's still the Prime Minister.
Well, you know, the words caretaker can't apply to Boris Johnson. He's never cared and taken care of anything in his life, and he should go. You know, he can't be trusted. He tells lies. He's broken the law. The idea that Conservative MPs are taking a job in his cabinet to prop him up for the next few weeks or months, I think is quite scandalous, actually. So Liberal Democrats will be working cross-party to see if we can get rid of him as soon as possible. Because our country needs a plan, and this government has got no plan. We need to help the millions of families and pensioners who are struggling out there, who can't afford to put food on the table, fill up their car with petrol, worrying about the heating bills this winter, and I've seen nothing from Boris Johnson to really address that, and I don't think we can wait any longer.
Others would say, you've got his scalp, just give him a break now.
No, I'm sorry, it's not like that. The issue is what's good for our country. The issue is what's good for the millions of people who are worried out there, the businesses who are struggling. And you can't have a lame duck Prime Minister. That's what he is. He's got no authority. He can't take the big decisions.
You say that, he might.
Well, I think there'll be a real problem in Parliament if he does. I think from his own side, possibly even from the Conservative leadership candidates, I think they'll say, hold on a minute, you've resigned, you've lost legitimacy. And I think the big decisions that our country makes... Let me give you an example. Liberal Democrats have argued for a tax cut. We think there should be a cut in VAT, 2.5%, big, bold measure to give the average household a £600 tax cut. That's what Liberal Democrats have argued for. And that's against Boris Johnson's government having put taxes up 15 times during a time when the bills are going through the roof. That's not what people need. They need some help. And I don't think Boris Johnson at this time has the ability to take that sort of bold decision that Liberal Democrats think are needed to help the families who are suffering.
That would be a major policy decision, so of course he can't.
But this is why he should go now. He should absolutely
To be replaced by whom?
Well, in the short term, one would have thought they'd put the Deputy Prime Minister in. At least he isn't as tainted as the Prime Minister. I mean, I'm no big fan of Dominic Raab, and I think he's got a lot to answer for, don't get me wrong. But at least get Boris Johnson out of the way, the one who's caused so much of the problems. And then we could at least judge that interim cabinet. But my real concern, and I'll be frank with you, you won't be surprised for me to say this, Kay, is I think there needs to be an early general election.
You're not going to get that.
Well, I'm going to push for it because I want the whole lot gone.
Yeah, but
because they should all take responsibility. They put him there. They've kept him there. They propped him up. When for many of us, it was obvious he wasn't fit, had no plan and wasn't competent. And that's why, and I make no apology for it, I think as soon as they've chosen their leader, there should be a general election.
There won't be, is my best bet. Why are you going to join ranks with Labour to push for a vote of no confidence in this government? Yeah,
Liberal Democrats will work cross-party with Labour, with the SNP. I think with some Conservative MPs, I've certainly heard some really worried that the idea...
So you could win a vote, you think?
Well, it's worth trying. You know, it's in the national interest for him to go now and not to stagger on. And so, yeah, we'll try everything. That's our duty as an opposition party. I think it's our patriotic duty. And one of my criticisms of all these Conservative MPs who've allowed this shambolic, incompetent Prime Minister to go on is they've not done their patriotic duty. They should put the national interest first, and they haven't done.
What do you make of people being critical of a party, a wedding party that Mr and Mrs Johnson want to have? I mean, why not?
Well, for me, the test, and I think you said this in your interview with James Cleverly, the test is, does the taxpayer paid? I think that people would be absolutely...
Don't throw my questions back at me.
No. I just thought it was a good point, Kate. You know, if the taxpayer was paying a single penny, that would be wrong. But I have to say, I think there's another issue here. And I think back to the pandemic and the lockdowns, and there were so many couples who wanted to get their ceremony, their marriage, their engagement party, and weren't able to...
Including the Johnsons?
Including the Johnsons. Well, they had one in Downing Street.
But a very small number of people were allowed to attend, which is why they want this party now.
Yeah, well, that didn't happen to some of the other parties there, did it? But this is my point. The whole bridal industry was in real chaos during that, and lots of people were disappointed. And I'm just thinking of how they're feeling, to be honest, when they hear about this huge, big party that's going to happen at Chequers. So the taxpayer is a big issue for me. The taxpayer should not be spending a penny. But my heart goes out to those people whose wonderful wedding times, those special moments, had to be either cancelled or curtailed dramatically. And I think that they'll be feeling a bit sore. That's the point I'm making. And
your party's done a bit of work, haven't they, a body of work about the amount of money that the last 3 days has cost the taxpayer?
Yeah, we're really alarmed because when ministers are appointed and then resigned, they have a payoff when they leave office. And some of these ministers will have been in place for hours. And according to the rules, they'll get a huge wodge of cash just for being appointed by Boris Johnson for a few hours. That is wrong.
That's like Michelle Donnellan, I think, is £17,000 she'll get.
Well,
although she has said to be education secretary for 36 hours, she has said if that's the case, she's not aware of it, she will give it to charity.
Well, no, I think the taxpayer who's really being hit hard and they need tax cuts, we shouldn't be wasting money on any of these ministers appointed in this way. I think we need a statement from Boris Johnson to say that none of these ministers will get any payoff whatsoever, and the taxpayer, for once by this government, will be looked after. I mean, I'm still scandalised by the waste of taxpayers' money during the lockdown. They wasted billions of pounds, and now they're going to waste thousands more to give themselves payoffs.
I think you've calculated 420,000, something like that.
Yeah, the clever people in Lib Dem HQ have done the full analysis of what this might mean for the taxpayer. It's our job as an opposition party to hold the government to account. That's the sort of thing we do. And it's a huge bill. It's a huge bill.
Although did you get a payoff when you left ministry?
Well, I'd served for 5 years and lost my seat. And I wouldn't begrudge that for any minister who spent a serious time doing a serious job, because you're not allowed to take another job for a period of time because you've been a minister. So that's what it's to do with. But our concern is these people have spent no time doing this job and they're going straight into another job. Some are being reappointed into another position. That clearly is wrong. I don't think it would happen in the private sector. I don't even think it would happen in other aspects of the public sector. It certainly shouldn't. And for these Conservative MPs to get these massive payoffs just is wrong.
We must let you go. We're out of time. But just to go back to that one point, it just popped into my head. As far as a vote of no confidence is concerned, how quickly do you think we might see that?
We're hoping Monday.
To talk to you. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Looking at today's other headlines, we now here on The Breakfast Show on Sky News. In the US, the former police officer Derek Chauvin has been sentenced to an additional 21 years in prison for violating George Floyd's civil rights. It adds to the sentence he's already serving for murder. He was on duty when he pinned George Floyd to the pavement for more than 9 minutes, resulting in his death in May 2020. He will serve that sentence concurrently. Parts of the UK will experience a heat wave over the weekend, with soaring temperatures set to last into next week. Temperatures of more than 29 degrees Celsius are expected across the south and east of England on Sunday, with forecasts surpassing 30 degrees on Monday. The UK HSA and Met Office have issued a level 2 health alert warning. British tennis number 1 Cameron Norrie faces the biggest match of his career at Wimbledon today. 26-year-old will take on the defending champion Novak Djokovic in the semi-final on centre court this afternoon. Whoever wins will face Australia's Nick Kyrgios on Sunday. Soaring wheat prices are causing the price of gin to go flying up, with warning some popular brands likely to introduce increases of several pounds a bottle. Wheat and cereal prices were already rising earlier in the year, but have been exacerbated by a grain shortage caused by Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind.
A one-off recording of Bob Dylan's famous song Blowing in the Wind has sold at auction for £1.5 million. It's the first new studio recording of the hit since Dylan wrote it in 1962. It was sold at Christie's in London, exceeding the estimated price of between £600,000 and £1 million.
Yes, and how many years can some people exist?
Today is the final day for airlines using UK airports to cancel flights without fear of punishment as part of efforts to give more certainty to passengers who are nervous about their summer holidays. Joining us now with the very latest is Shaman. Hi, Shaman. It's great to see you. I haven't seen you for ages. So tell me, what does this all mean?
Good morning. Yes, it is great to see you too. Well, basically, airlines are usually allocated a slot at the major airports, such as here at Heathrow or at Gatwick. But if those slots go unused, it has to be forfeited, which can be very costly and complicated. So last month, the government introduced this so-called slot amnesty in the hopes that it would make it easier for airlines to plan ahead and stop those last-minute cancellations that we've seen as well. We've also heard more recently from the CAA that in the first 5 months of this year, just shy of 10,000 flights have already been cancelled, and we've already seen, heard or experienced these delays for ourselves across many airports across the UK. So this slot amnesty was hoped that it would make it easier for airlines to plan ahead with fewer flights. And just on Wednesday, we heard from British Airways that they would also be cancelling hundreds of flights this summer that could impact thousands of people. We've also heard from the consumer company Which as well that said it was good that this amnesty could potentially stop these last-minute cancellations. But we're a little bit concerned that the airlines still don't seem to have a plan of action of how they were going to approach this summer period, which is of course the busiest period for many airlines across the UK. And they say that whilst this uncertainty is very clear, the airlines are continuing to take bookings. So this is the final day for airlines to be able to cancel those flights without fear of punishment.
OK, thanks so much indeed. Thanks a lot. Do you want to have a look at some of the images in the papers? I think Freya's put these together for us this morning. Let's have a look, starting with the Daily Mirror. Get a load of this fish. A fishmonger's bunkered down in Edinburgh with a halibut that's even bigger than he is. It's over 5 feet 10 inches. That is in the Mirror this morning. A sea of spuds in the Telegraph as well. 10,000 to be precise. A woman photographed here with a top which is almost as pink as the potatoes are. It's a farm in Bangladesh. Great photo. Guardian, ballet dancers getting ready for a performance in Odessa in Ukraine. Brave people indeed. Now, remember when Wallpapergate was the biggest scandal on our now outgoing Prime Minister's plate? It centred, of course, around the PM failing to disclose a loan of £50,000 from a Tory donor. Well, an invoice from that refurbishment has now been leaked. Gives us an insight into how that money was spent. Are you ready? I'm going to move out of the way. £15,000 on 2 sofas. And then, on top of that, spent another £2,880 upholstering them. Why not buy them the right colour in the first place? They spent £3,675 on a drinks trolley. They won't be able to afford the gin at this rate. £2,260 on what's described as gold wallpaper. Steam that off. Perhaps the very wallpaper the scandal is named after, no doubt. And another £500. Seems like a drop in the bucket now, doesn't it? But it was on a tablecloth for the kitchen table. Hope it was a nice one. Now, the Prime Minister announced he was resigning yesterday, but what is his role over the next few months before a successor is decided? Going to be asking, in fact, I did already ask the new Education Secretary, James Cleverly, if he was simply just a caretaker Prime Minister.
He has to form a government. We have to have a functioning government. He has put people in place. I looked around the cabinet table. There's a wealth of experience around the cabinet table to make sure that we continue delivering government, because the world does not stop. The issues that we deal with don't stop. So he has a duty to ensure that government
But it's not
continues.
his cabinet anymore, is it?
Well, it is until a new Prime Minister is in place.
So he is influencing policy then?
No, but the point is that there are day-to-day decisions that have to be made in all kinds of departments across government. What he has said is he is not going to make decisions that would limit the options for his successor. That would be wrong. I think that is the right and honourable thing to do.
So he's a caretaker Prime Minister, to all intents and purposes. Does that make you a caretaker Education Secretary?
Well, you are in the job that you are in, doing the job that you are doing until you are replaced. That is how it always works in politics. None of us know exactly how long we're going to be in our roles. Ultimately, I'm not going to focus on how long or whatever. There are decisions that need to be taken in education.
Rob's with us, but he wouldn't say whether he was going to pay the teachers or not. Did he, Rob?
Yeah, on that 9% pay rise for teachers that, of course, his predecessor, who's now number 11, just up the road from where I am, he said that it wouldn't be responsible for him to make policy on the hoof. So plenty of teachers will be hanging on James Cleverly's words in the months ahead. I thought what the new Education Secretary was doing was trying to flesh out what Boris Johnson will and won't do in the weeks ahead. He said he wouldn't be limiting his options for his successor, that he'd be acting as a caretaker. There's many Tory MPs, though, that think that after the last 2 days of Boris Johnson hanging on and refusing to go, that he should go now and that a caretaker Prime Minister, a separate person, should come in. I'm not sure the consensus is necessarily there in the party to actually make that happen, but I think a lot will depend on how Boris Johnson acts in the weeks ahead. And if he's perceived to be overstepping the mark, then I think that pressure may rise for him to go and for someone else to come in. I think a lot depends also on the timescale for the leadership election that we'll find out from the 1922 Committee of Backbench MPs next week. James Cleverly, I think, emphasising that he wants to see a new leader come in promptly, also saying that that new leader won't be him. He stood last time but pulled out before it got to the voting stage, saying it wasn't the right time for him and that his wife was still receiving treatment for cancer. I think it will still be a crowded field, though. Tom Tugendhat, the chair of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, overnight entering the race. Grant Shapps, the Transport Secretary, also putting himself forward. So there'll be plenty of choice for Conservative MPs and Conservative members when we do eventually get round to that leadership race.
Also, though, just before I let you go, I know you're busy, Rob, was the fact that when I asked him whether he would be supporting somebody that had stabbed the Prime Minister in the back, he didn't say directly, but he did say that loyalty was important.
Yeah, I think keeping his options open is probably the best way to describe James Cleverly on who he would be backing. It's difficult because I think people like Nadhim Zahawi, who went into government, went into the Treasury, got a promotion under Boris Johnson, for some backbenchers, I think he will be seen as tainted, as too tied to Boris Johnson, if you like. Others, though, as you say, that did resign, I think while that will be plus points for some backbenchers that didn't like Boris Johnson, for others, maybe they will be seen, as you say, as disloyal. So many things that people will be weighing up. I think the biggest, though, the biggest questions will be around the economy and cost of living and huge issues affecting the public out there as well, like NHS backlogs as well. Those will be the big things, I think, that MPs and the wider Conservative Party membership will be making their minds up on.
Yeah, and who supported Brexit and who didn't. For now, thanks so much indeed, Rob. Thank you. Let's get a view from a Conservative grandee on yesterday's resignation. Anne Widdecombe is joining us, former Conservative Minister, of course. Hello to you, Ms Widdecombe. Thanks for joining us. Did he make the right decision in stepping down?
Oh, I think it had become absolutely inevitable. The position had become untenable. For the sake of stability, which of course we now haven't got and the country hasn't got, I did want him to remain. But he's decided to go. That's it. That's it now. It's no good looking back and analysing, was it right, was it wrong? It's done. The party has now got to get on with it. And the country, sadly, will be directionless probably for several months.
Didn't hear him apologising. He never used the word apology, did he? He didn't seem to feel that he'd done anything wrong.
Well, perhaps he thinks he hasn't. Perhaps he believes that he did not deliberately lie, that he may have got things wrong, but that it wasn't deliberate. But frankly, when you say he didn't apologise, I have been irritated over the last few months hearing nothing but apologies from this Prime Minister. He's always saying, yes, I got it wrong, I apologise. Why you wanted him to stand there and say it yet again yesterday, I do not know. He has gone. Now let's concentrate on the future, whatever, heaven help us, that future might be. Here we are with a cost of living increase, record NHS waiting lists, war in Ukraine, and we don't know who the Prime Minister is. God help us.
Do you think he had anything to apologise for?
Well, I'm not convinced that he deliberately lied, but I think the thing that he lacked throughout was any sort of grip. Boris is naturally chaotic. Now, he should have recognised that the instant that he became Prime Minister, as he did when he became Mayor of London and let others do the organisation. He should have recognised that and made two resolutions. One was not to speak until he'd ascertained his facts, and all his problems have come from the fact that he just speaks, just says what he thinks, and then has to revise it later. But secondly, he should have had the savvy right from the start, Kay, to say, right, we need somebody in Downing Street with grip. And once Dominic Cummings had gone, and I don't hold a brief for Dominic, but he had grip. Once Dominic had gone, there was no grip in Downing Street. Nobody was saying to the Prime Minister, shut up and think what this looks like. Not how you think it is, but what it looks like. And he just didn't have that. He is natural chaos. I mean, everybody who's ever dealt with him knows that he used to miss appointments, that he didn't know from one day to the next what it was he said he was going to do the day before. Now, that's fine because he also had big views and a lot of courage, but it needed somebody behind him getting that organised. He's lacked that throughout.
He also promoted a sexual predator.
You talking about Chris Pincher?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Boris said at the time, you know, that he didn't realise that it had gone on for so long. Then later he said, oh, yes, he did vaguely remember. But, you know, once again, he was responding to loyalty, he was responding to ability, and he probably didn't, you make a good point, he probably didn't focus on the question that said, hang on, this guy's also got some other tendencies which could prove dangerous for the party. Now, what we do know is that nothing was going wrong until Chris Pincher got disastrously drunk, and then it did go wrong big time. Now, people make prime ministers, all prime ministers, even very good prime ministers, make appointments that don't turn out to be so clever. I won't hold that against him. What I do hold against him is the consistent, unrelieved chaos of his time in office.
So, sorry, just to clarify, you don't hold against him the fact that he knew a man was a sexual predator. He was told that he was a sexual predator. He referred to him as Pincher by name, Pincher by nature, and that was okay.
I suspect that Boris did not, and I only suspect, I do not know what was in Boris's mind, that he didn't understand the serious nature, that he thought it was frivolous. Oh, well, you know, maybe Chris, you know, makes inappropriate comments or something. In fact, it was much more serious than that.
Miss Widdecombe, he was told. He was told.
Sorry,
Somebody actually, he was briefed. He was briefed face to face and told that his behaviour was unacceptable, and he was still promoted. He's still promoted as somebody that he knew to be a sexual predator.
Well, as I say, I think Boris may not have understood fully, because Boris does not concentrate, the extent to which that man did misbehave. Now, it's done, Kay. I mean, this is the point I keep making today. We can go over it forevermore, but it's done. And the big question in my mind is, you know, what happens next? Who is going to be the leader? How is this country going to be run in the interim? And I must say, you know, you're inviting me to condemn Boris this morning. Look at the people who are laughing and gloating. The Russians, for a start, Barnier and Verhofstadt are carrying on. If you judge a man by his enemies, we probably lost quite a good man.
I'm not asking you to condemn him at all. I'm just highlighting for you the reason that he has found himself in a position where he's no longer going to be Prime Minister, and that is because he promoted a sexual predator and lied about it again.
It's done, Kate. It's done. He's gone. You've got what you want.
I see he's still in Downing Street. He's not, though. He doesn't realise, according to his speech, listening to his speech, he doesn't feel that he's done anything wrong. And the only thing that went wrong for him was that the herd turned against him. He has no contrition.
As I say, I've heard nothing but apologies coming from the Prime Minister for months now. The fact that he didn't give the final grand apology that you want is just bad luck. And I have no doubt whatever that you and the rest of the media will now spend your time campaigning to get him out of Downing Street altogether, contrary to all precedent. And meanwhile, the country is ungoverned. And I'm not exaggerating. This party couldn't run a whelk stall, quite honestly.
Which party?
Conservative Party. That's the one in government, isn't it? Unless I've missed something overnight.
So they I'm sorry, I'm a bit confused. So they were fit to be governed, but now they can't run a whelk stall. I'm a bit confused about what you're saying there.
I don't think they can run a whelk stall. I'm being totally serious. I was yesterday when I said, and it wasn't a clever comment, I actually meant it, that the worst possible outcome for the country would be a Labour government, but the second worst possible outcome is this government. It is hopeless, it is drifting, it is chaotic, it is divided, it is just about every last thing that you want from a government.
We all better run for the lifeboats. It's good to talk to you, Anne Widdecombe, as always. Thank you very much. Expecting more detail next week on how the timeline for the race to succeed. Whoa. Boris Johnson with the PM staying on in number 10 until the winner is announced. Joining us, Dr Andrew Blick, Director of the Centre for British Politics and Government at King's College. Hi, thanks for joining us.
Good morning.
Reaction to what Ms Widdecombe was saying?
Well, I thought it's a very interesting defence to mount. And you've done well to find someone who's willing to go on air and defend the current Prime Minister, I might add, not the former Prime Minister, in that way. I think it raises some interesting questions, though. Johnson apologists, of which we've heard one, tend to claim that what he's good at is the big calls. He got all the big calls right. Whether or not you buy that or not, that's a defence for him. But we're now being told he's going to stay on, not to make any big calls, but to keep the ship running, to keep things going, to deal with the kind of day-to-day business, which is the very thing that, even by his apologist's own admission, he's no good at. So it's quite an interesting proposition here. What's actually going to go on? How are things going to operate? And how are we going to actually ensure that he isn't required to make any big calls, and also that he does actually behave himself? Because he seems to be able to produce scandals on an industrial scale. One is rolling off the production line every day, seemingly. They are going to carry on, I would expect. I think we can assume there's going to be more scandals to come. Yet he's still in the job, and we don't know when he's going.
So I tried to nail down with the Education Secretary. I don't know if you heard him chatting to us in the last half an hour or so. He says there's no such thing as a caretaker Prime Minister. He is the Prime Minister. So if you're talking about the big calls, he could actually bring in policy if he wanted to. There's nothing to stop him.
There's no separation, is there? Because we don't get to decide when we have to make a big decision. We don't know what's going to happen. If we'd have been told a year ago or 2 years ago all the things that are coming up, we'd have been surprised. We just wouldn't have known they're coming. And that's what government is for. It's partly there to respond to events, and those events have a habit of coming, and whoever's in charge has to be able to respond to them. So the idea that you can't bind the hands of successors doesn't really stand up. And in this country, we don't really have these things clarified. And it's quite true, we don't have a clear concept of what a caretaker Prime Minister is. We've not really been in this situation. But we've got someone who's said they're on the way out. We don't know when they're going, but while they're in...
Did he say that?
Did he say that? Good question. Heavily implied he's on the way out.
He didn't say, I resign. Is there any way back for him?
I don't doubt that in the back of his mind he's right now thinking, great, I've made the problem go away, I'm still in the job, I at least get to have my wedding party or whatever it is he's planning to do. And, you know, for him to still...
At his own cost.
At his own cost, good, that's good to know. But at the same time, as far as he's concerned, getting to the end of the day still in the job is a win, and that's what he's done. So I wouldn't be at all sure that he's completely given up. And if you look at the history of his career, it's a series of people saying, OK, he's gone too far now, he can't possibly progress any further. This was being said when he was a backbench MP, it's probably being said when he was a journalist, it's being said when he was Mayor of London, it's being said when he's Foreign Secretary. He's now had it, we can worry about something else. And some people are probably doing that now. Other people see there's still a problem, and getting rid of him might not be as straightforward as he maybe has encouraged us to think.
Will he still be in power in September?
I wouldn't rule it out, but I think there will be a lot of pressure now to get rid of him. But I don't think he's going to go quietly. Still, he's not going to go quietly.
Goodness. As far as the next leader is concerned, it's quite a protracted form of putting them in post, isn't it? Not least because grassroots, I think there's something like up to 200,000 managed to get a vote, and that could take some time, and there'll be some campaigning going on as well before that. To that end, Sir John Major, former Prime Minister, has said we should miss that bit out and just allow MPs in the House of Commons to decide. Is that possible?
I think it would politically be very difficult, but I suppose it's possible. The alternative would be for MPs to try and coalesce around a single candidate without having a proper competition. But I think, again, that would be very difficult because there are a lot of different factions in the Conservative Party. That's one reason why Boris was given the job, because he was believed to be the only person who could pull those different factions together, paper over the gaps with his charisma. Now, that's not working any longer. He is probably going. Let's park that one for a moment. But it's difficult to know who can actually resolve those different disputes, those different tensions within the party. So it might be that it has to be given to the members to resolve it. It might be difficult to get around that. We'll see.
How fascinating. Thanks very much indeed for joining us. Much appreciated. Thank you. Meantime, the rumours of who will replace Boris, just talking about that, as the next Prime Minister, are already swirling around Westminster. But a leadership election could take several months, with over 50 ministers having their positions filled in this week alone. There is some confusion how government will now operate. Here to give us more of an insight is Will Tanner, former Deputy Head of Policy in Number 10, now Director of Campaigning think tank Onward. Hi, it's good to see you. Thanks for joining us on the programme. What do you think is going to happen next?
Well, I think we've had 24 hours of complete chaos, but we now should enter a period of relative stability. As you know, the 1922 committee is due to meet to set out the rules for the leadership race that should be published on Monday. We may even have the first hustings early next week. And that process, as Geoffrey Copeland-Brown has been saying this morning, should be a very expedited process. So we should have hustings and votes in Parliament, as we had in 2019 and in 2016, over a period of 2 to 3 weeks before the remaining two candidates go to the membership. And that process should, again, be relatively swift with a new leader in place before September. So I'm hoping that this process is an orderly transition. I have some question marks over whether or not that can happen, with Boris Johnson still in Downing Street overshadowing that contest. But at least we have now moved on to the next stage and beyond the point where we had a Prime Minister squatting in Downing Street.
So what do you think his role is between now and the next Prime Minister being elected?
Well, in any normal circumstances, you would trust the outgoing Prime Minister to effectively just keep a hand on the tiller of government. We did that with Theresa May. We saw that again with David Cameron while the contest happened. But I think the events of this week have really shaken the confidence of many MPs, and I would argue also officials within government, about the ability for the Prime Minister to do that. He is a maverick. He doesn't really play by the rules. And while he has given reassurances that he will not make any big calls, ultimately he is still the head of the government. He has the ability to make spending decisions. He has the ability to represent the UK on the world stage. And I think there is a possibility that he will try and influence this race in subtle ways, rather than necessarily standing back as previous incumbent prime ministers would have done.
Is there anything that he can't do today that he could do yesterday?
Well, I think the key block on the Prime Minister's ability to cause trouble is his new cabinet. They have all been appointed as caretakers, and while some of them are Boris Johnson loyalists, a number of them aren't. And clearly, if he tried to do anything beyond what he has said, then I suspect a number of them, Greg Clark and others, would tender their resignation and effectively force that vote of no confidence to remove him from Downing Street. But there isn't a formal mechanism, but I think ultimately the cabinet will prove a check and balance in this case.
Well, James cleverly said that he wasn't a caretaker. He was appointed as the Education Secretary. And if we saw Greg Clark and people like that resign, I'm just putting that out there, you know, he would potentially just fill those posts with more of his colleagues.
Well, so firstly, all ministers are there until they're replaced. I mean, these are always temporary appointments, and James is right to say that he should serve for as long as he is in the job. But I think the kind of pretext of all of those appointments were that they were temporary roles until a new leader was in place and could appoint their own cabinet. The other thing I would say is Boris Johnson found it incredibly difficult to appoint a cabinet, and indeed there are a number of junior ministerial posts still vacant, as I understand it, unable to appoint those roles while he remains Prime Minister. So I don't think it is as simple as just saying he will replace those people. He tried to do that 2 days ago, and that didn't really work. So ultimately, I think this would bind his hands to some degree.
What did you make of his speech?
I thought it was much more bullish and much less contrite than it could have been and should have been. I think ultimately we are at this situation because of a number of failings on the Prime Minister's own behalf, and he failed completely to acknowledge those and instead blamed the herd mentality of his own MPs. The Conservative Party did not want to do this. It had many opportunities to do this in the past few months, but ultimately the Prime Minister forced his own colleagues' hands, and his speech showed absolutely no contrition really about that fact. So I'm not sure it was a reasonable way for him to go out, and I suspect history will judge him poorly for it, but ultimately that was the decision he took.
Didn't say resign at all, did he?
He did not, and that is classic Boris Johnson, refusing to admit defeat even when it is staring him in the face.
It's good to talk to you. Thanks for your insight. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
So, the king is dead. Long live the king or queen. But who might that be? Watch out when the traps open in the next day or so. In fact, two have already, three people have already said that they want to stand, including Ms Braverman, and in addition to that, Grant Shapps, I think, has also said, and Tom Tugendhat has also said that he would like to be the next Prime Minister. But they'll have to fight off this guy if that's what they plan to do. Leaving his home this morning.
Are you going to be the next Prime Minister?
Saying absolutely nothing. I'm sure he'll have plenty to say over the next few days and weeks.